I need to tell you about October. October 4th, 1955. The Brooklyn Dodgers win the World Series. Not just win for the first time in the history of the franchise. After 55 years of existence, after 5 previous World Series appearances and 5 previous losses, after decades of being the team that New York loved and New York pitied, and New York organized an entire civic identity of near-miss around, the Brooklyn Dodgers won the World Series. I am not a baseball person. I want to be clear about this, because what I'm about to describe might otherwise sound like a baseball fan's account of a baseball event, which it is not. I am a woman who grew up in New York, and who has lived in New York for 40 years, and who has a relationship with baseball that is primarily ambient. I know who is playing. I know approximately how they are doing. I understand the emotional weather that a winning or losing season creates in the city. But I have not, in 40 years, sat down to watch a game with the focused attention of someone for whom the game itself is the point. What happened on October 4th was not about baseball. Or rather, it was about baseball, and it was about something else. And the something else was more visible in New York that day than I have seen it be visible about anything since the end of the war. The something else was joy. Pure, uncut, democratically distributed joy. The kind of joy that doesn't care about your address, or your income, or your skin color, or whether you're a man or a woman, or old or young. The kind of joy that arrives and makes equal use of every available human being in its vicinity. I was in Manny's when the game ended. The radio was on. Rita's radio, behind the counter, turned up to a volume that Rita would normally consider impolite, and had decided, for this occasion, to consider necessary. The room had filled over the previous 2 hours. People who were not normally Manny's customers. People who had wandered in because they needed to be somewhere with other people and a radio. People who had the expression of those who are not yet ready for the outcome of something important to arrive while they are alone. When the final out was recorded, when the announcer's voice shifted into that particular register of disbelief becoming certainty, the room did something I have not seen a room do outside of a theatrical context. It became, briefly, one thing. 40 separate people in a corner coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon in October became, for approximately 30 seconds, a single organism expressing a single feeling. They laughed and they shouted and they embraced people they didn't know, and they hit the tables with their hands, and they said versions of, "I can't believe it," over and over, in the specific way that people say things they can't believe, but are required to believe because they're happening. Rita, original Rita, the real Rita, was crying. I didn't know Rita could cry. I had known Rita for 8 years. I had seen Rita handle difficult customers and broken equipment and bad deliveries and the specific frustration of a cracked pie plate during the lunch rush. And through all of it, Rita had maintained an expression of what I can only describe as philosophically grounded competence. Rita was crying. And I thought, sitting in my corner and watching this, that this is one of the things that New York has that nowhere else does. This ability, which the city exercises sporadically and without warning, to make 40 strangers in a coffee shop into a single, brief community. Not through planning or policy or civic programming. Through a baseball team winning a game. It makes no sense. It is also one of the most genuinely human things I have ever seen. I've been not talking about Jack for 7.5 sections. The way you don't talk about something when the talking of it makes it more real. Jack Morrow is 49 years old. He is back in New York after 3 years in Los Angeles, back for a project that interested him, back on 52nd Street on Tuesday evenings, back in his chair at Connolly's, with his drink and his specific brand of questions that arrive like small, useful keys. He has a cough. He has had the cough since winter. It is the kind of cough that a man of 49 in 1955 describes as nothing serious, and a woman who has been listening to it for 6 months describes, privately, as the cough that makes her pay attention when he speaks, because she has started to unconsciously calculate the distance between sentences. His doctor told him to cut back on the cigarettes. Jack is thinking about this. He is thinking about it in the specific way that Jack thinks about things he doesn't want to think about, which is, he holds them at an oblique angle, addresses them from the side, never looks at them directly. The way you don't look directly at the sun, even when you need to know where the sun is. Last Tuesday at Connolly's, he said, "I'm going to cut back." I said, "When?" He said, "After this pack." I looked at him. He looked at me. We both understood that this conversation had already happened, in various forms, in various locations, over the course of 6 months. We both understood that after this pack is not a plan, it is a postponement, and that postponements, in the specific circumstance of something that is slowly and methodically destroying tissue, are not neutral. I didn't say any of this. I said, "How are you sleeping?" He said, "Fine." He was lying. I could tell because Jack, who has never lied to me about anything important, lies about physical things with the particular clumsiness of a man who has spent his whole life being honest and finds the new vocabulary of denial unfamiliar and ill-fitting. I let it go that night. I carry it from that night. There is a kind of loving that consists primarily of watching and not speaking, of knowing and not saying, of carrying the weight of what you see so that the person you're watching doesn't have to see you seeing it. This is not the most glamorous form of love. It does not have poems written about it. But it is real, and it is what I have with Jack in this particular season. And I am grateful that after 8 years of the most honest friendship of my adult life, I still have the language for something as complicated as this. Here is what I know at 40 that I didn't know at 32, when I first sat at this table. I know that the things that feel like endings are usually something else. They are transitions, or beginnings in disguise, or the middle of something longer than you could see from where you were standing. In 1947, I was certain that the trajectory of my life had a specific direction. In 1955, I can tell you that the trajectory of my life has surprised me so many times and in so many specific ways that the word trajectory may not be the right one. Topography might be better. The way the land actually is, with its unexpected rises and unexpected depths, its changes of weather, its moments of stunning visibility, and its stretches of fog so thick you navigate by feel rather than sight. I know that the work is what remains when everything else has been subject to change. I know this not as a slogan, as a fact, with evidence, with the specific receipts that 8 years of having a career in various conditions and various markets and various states of one's own confidence provides. The work was there when the film offers diminished. The work was there during the negotiations and the contracts and the waiting. The work was there in the rehearsal room on Tuesday mornings when it was the only thing that was certain. The work doesn't care about your other conditions. It only asks, are you doing it? I know that 40 is not the number I was told it was. I was told, in the accumulated cultural messaging of every film I ever saw and every magazine I ever read in the waiting rooms of various professional situations, that 40 was an arrival, a conclusion, a moment at which certain chapters closed and certain doors locked with some finality. I am here to report that this is incorrect, or at least that it has been incorrect in my specific case. 40 feels like having finally accumulated enough material to do the interesting work. Not the early work, which was necessary and formative, and which I would not trade. the interesting work. The work that uses what you've learned, rather than producing the material you'll eventually learn from. I know that Thomas is the right person. I know this with a certainty that is not the certainty of someone who has never doubted. I have doubted, in the middle of the night, in the way that everyone who has ever chosen something important has doubted, with the full weight of the alternative lives that weren't chosen pressing against the walls of the actual life. But the certainty is larger than the doubt. It is the certainty of enough evidence accumulated over enough time to constitute something stronger than hope, which is knowledge. He is the right person. This is perhaps the most important thing I know at 40. I have been at this table for 2.5 hours. The coffee has been refilled 4 times. Rita has checked on me with the specific frequency and lightness of touch that is her particular gift. Present enough that I don't feel abandoned. Unobtrusive enough that I don't feel observed. I've told you about the cars and the vaccine and Elvis and the television and the automats and the Dodgers and Jack and what I know at 40. There is one thing I haven't told you. In October of this year, October 1955, a few weeks before the World Series, a woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. She was tired after a long day of work. She was in a seat in the colored section of the bus. A white man wanted the seat. She refused to move. She was arrested. And in response to her arrest, the black community of Montgomery, Alabama, organized a boycott of the city's bus system that has now been going on for weeks and shows no signs of ending. They are walking to work. They are carpooling. They are organizing with a coherence and a sustained commitment that the people who believed them manageable did not anticipate. I have been watching this from New York. Which I described in 1947 as a city that doesn't have legal segregation and practices structural discrimination anyway. And I have been thinking about what it means that a woman who refused to move from a seat is, from where I sit in 1955, one of the most important things that happened this year. More important than the cars. More important than the vaccine, even. Because the vaccine is something that was done for people. The vaccine arrived in the fullness of time, after sufficient investment and sufficient scientific progress, and it ended a disease. What is happening in Montgomery is something different. What is happening in Montgomery is people deciding, without waiting for it to be done for them, without waiting for the fullness of time or sufficient institutional progress, that a specific injustice has existed long enough and will not be tolerated further. I don't know where this goes. I'm sitting in my corner of Manny's in November 1955, and I don't know where this goes. I know where I want it to go, but what I want and what history produces are not the same thing. And I have been alive long enough to know that history often requires more than one Rosa Parks, and more than one Montgomery, and more than one refusal. What I know is this: something shifted. In October, in Montgomery, something shifted in the specific way that things shift when someone does the simple, unremarkable, absolutely necessary thing of saying, "No, not yet. Not this. Not anymore. I will be watching." That is 1955. The cars and the cure and the voice on the radio and the woman on the bus. Chrome on the outside, fear and hope, and the beginning of something enormous on the inside. Exactly what 1955 is. Come back in 10 years. In 10 years, Jack will be gone. In 10 years, a president will have been killed, and a generation will have been broken open by it. And out of what breaks open, something remarkable will begin to grow. In 10 years, Clara will be 8 years old, and she will be playing the Beatles too loudly, and I will pretend it bothers me. It won't bother me at all. Come back in 10 years. I'll tell you about all of it.